The Lincoln Center's David Giffen Hall was filled to capacity that evening, every seat occupied by music lovers who had come to witness what promised to be the performance of a lifetime. The International Virtuoso competition had drawn the world's most talented violinists to New York, but tonight belonged to Elena Marchetti, the prodigious 24-year-old Italian whose reputation had been built on performances that seemed to transcend the very boundaries of what was humanly possible. Elena stood center stage, her Stradivarius gleaming under the warm concert lights. She had chosen Paganini Caprice number 24 for her final piece, a composition notorious for its technical demands and the way it seemed to mock lesser violinists with its impossible passages. The audience held their collective breath as she raised her bow. Dr. Marcus Webb, the competition's chief judge and a former concertmaster himself, leaned forward in his front row seat. In his 50 years of musical experience, he had never encountered a violinist quite like Elena. Her technique was flawless, but more than that, she seemed to channel something otherworldly through her instrument. Some critics had whispered that her performance were almost supernatural, that she played notes that should not exist. As Elena began the opening measures, the hall fell into that perfect silence that only occurs when an audience realizes that they are witnessing greatness. Her fingers danced across the strings with impossible precision, and the violin sang with a voice that seemed to come from another realm entirely. Each note was crystal clear, and each phrase was perfectly articulated. But it was during the third moment, as Elena launched into a particularly demanding passage, that the impossible happened. The music soared to an incredible crescendo, her bow moving so quickly it seemed to blur. The audience was transfixed, many sitting on the edges of their seats. Dr. Webb noticed that Elena appeared to be playing additional notes, harmonics, and overtones that shouldn't have been possible with a single violin. He blinked, wondering if his aged years were playing tricks on him. Then, in an instant that would be replayed countless times in the minds of everyone present, Elena simply vanished. One moment she was there, bow dancing across the strings in a fury of technical brilliance, and the next moment the stage was empty. Her violin continued to vibrate on the wooden floor where it had fallen, the last note still resonating through the hall, as if the instrument itself couldn't believe what had just occurred. The silence that followed was deafening. For a full 10 seconds, the audience sat in stunned disbelief, wondering if this was some elaborate theatrical effect, part of the performance itself. But as the violin's vibrations slowly faded and Elena failed to reappear, murmurs began to ripple through the crowd. Dr. Webb was the first to move, practically leaping from his seat and rushing onto the stage. The other judges followed, their faces masked of confusion and concern. Security guards appeared from the wings, and their radios crackling to life as they tried to make the sense of what they had just witnessed. "Nobody move!" shouted Detective Sarah Chen, who had been in the audience as a mayor's guest and was now taking charge of what was rapidly becoming a crime scene. "I need everyone to remain calm and stay in your seats." As the hall erupted into concerned chatter, Dr. Webb knelt beside Elena's violin. The Stradivarius lay on its side, still gleaming under the lights. He could swear he could still feel vibrations coming from the strings, as if they had just been played. More puzzling still was the sheet of music on the stand besides where Elena had been standing. The pages were Elena's personal arrangement of the Paganini piece, covered in her precise handwriting and practice notes. But there, in the final measures she had been playing was something that made Dr. Webb's blood run cold. Written in what appears to be Elena's own hand was an additional note, a note that existed in a position no human hand could possibly reach on a violin, a fingering that defied the physical limitations of both instrument and musician. Detective, Dr. Webb called out, his voice shaky. You need to see this. Detective Shen approached, her trained eyes taking in every detail of the scene. She was a classical music lover herself, which was why she had been at the concert in the first place. But she'd never encountered anything like this in her 15 years on the force. What am I looking at, Doctor? This note. Dr. Webb pointed to the addition on the sheet music. It's impossible. The fingering would require a handspan of at least 14 inches. Elena is a small woman, maybe 5 feet 4 inches tall. There's no way she could have written this, let alone played it. Detective Shen examined the sheet music carefully. The handwriting certainly appeared to match the rest of the Elena's notes on the pages. Could someone else have added this? I suppose it's possible, but Dr. Webb trailed off, his mind racing. Detective, I need to tell you something. There have been rumors about Elena for months. Some people in the classical music world have been saying that her performances are too perfect, too technically advanced. There have been whispers about the supernatural, about her having made some kind of deal with, well, the forces beyond our understanding. Detective Shen raised an eyebrow. Doctor, are you seriously suggesting that this young woman was kidnapped by ghosts? Before Dr. Webb could respond, a commotion erupted near the back of the hall. A young man was pushing through the crowd, his face pale with panic. Elena! Where is Elena? He called out. I am her manager, David Rees. What happened to her? Detective Shen intercepted him before he could reach the stage. Mr. Rees, I am Detective Shen with the police department. Your client appears to have disappeared during her performance. I need to ask you some questions. David's hands were shaking as he tried to process what he was hearing. Disappeared? What do you mean disappeared? People don't just vanish into thin air. That's exactly what we are trying to figure out, Detective Shen replied grimly. When did you last speak with Elena? About 2 hours ago, during intermission. She was in her dressing room preparing for the final piece. She seemed fine, maybe a little nervous, but that's normal before a big performance. David ran his hands through his hair. Detective, Elena has been receiving some strange messages lately, threatening letters. This caught Detective Shen's attention immediately. What kind of threatening letters? They started about 3 weeks ago. Anonymous notes warning her to withdraw from the competition. They claimed that her success was unnatural, that she was cheating somehow. Most of them mentioned supernatural elements, said that she had made a pact with the dark forces to enhance her abilities. Dr. Webb stepped forward. Detective, there's something else you should know. Elena wasn't the only favorite to win this competition. There's another violinist, Victor Petrov, who many consider equally talented. He's been her main rival for the past 2 years. Where is Mr. Petrov now? He should be in the backstage, preparing for his performance tonight. He was scheduled to play after Elena's performance. Detective Shen immediately dispatched officers to locate Victor Petrov while she continued to examine the scene. The more she studied the evidence, the more convinced she became that this wasn't a supernatural occurrence, despite the seemingly impossible circumstances. The sheet music bothered her most of all. While the additional note did appear to be in Elena's handwriting, Detective Shen had noticed something that Dr. Webb had missed. The ink was slightly different, fresher than the rest of the annotations on the page. Someone had added that note recently, and they had done so with the specific intention of making it appear supernatural. Meanwhile, backstage, Officer Rodrigo located Victor Petrov in his assigned dressing room. The Russian violinist was a tall, imposing figure with sharp features and intense dark eyes. He appeared to be in the middle of his practice session when the officer knocked. Mr. Petrov, I am Officer Rodrigo with the police department. I need you to come with me to answer some questions about Elena Marchetti's disappearance. Victor's face showed what appeared to be genuine surprise. Disappearance? What are you talking about? Elena was supposed to perform tonight. She did perform, sir, but she vanished during her final piece, disappeared right off the stage. Victor set down his violin carefully, his expression shifting to one of concern. That's impossible. How does someone just disappear? As Victor was escorted to meet with Detective Shen, she was busy coordinating with the crime scene unit and interviewing the other witnesses. The audience members all corroborated the same impossible story. Elena had simply vanished into thin air while playing. The stage hands confirmed that there were no trapdoors, no hidden passages, no way for someone to exit the stage without being seen. But Detective Shen had learned long ago that the impossible usually had very possible explanations, and her instincts told her that this case was no different. When Victor was brought before her, she studied his face carefully as she explained what had happened. His reaction seemed genuine: shock, confusion, and what appeared to be real concern for Elena's well being. Mr. Petrov, I've heard that you and Miss Marchetti are competitors in this tournament. Yes, that's correct. Elena is. She's an extraordinary violinist. Probably the most talented musician I've ever encountered. Victor's accent was thick, but his English was precise. We have competed against each other many times over the past few years. Would you say there's animosity between you? Victor considered this carefully. Detective, in classical music, we are all competitors. But we are also colleagues. Elena and I respect each other's abilities. Yes, we both want to win, but I would never wish harm upon her. Detective Shen made notes as he spoke, but something in Victor's demeanor was setting off alarm bells in her mind. He was almost too composed, too ready with his answers. Mr. Petrov, where were you during Elena's performance tonight? I was in my dressing room, practicing. I always practice during other performers' sets. It helps me stay focused. Can anyone verify that? A slight hesitation. I. No, I don't think so. I prefer to practice alone before important performances. Detective Shen's suspicions were growing stronger by the minute. She excused herself and stepped outside to make a phone call to her partner, Detective Williams, who was still at the precinct. Williams, I need you to run a background check on Viktor Petrov. Age approximately 26. Russian national. Professional violinist. I also need you to check his financial records and see if there have been any unusual transactions lately. While she waited for the information, Detective Shen returned to examine the crime scene carefully. She walked the entire stage, looking for any clue that might explain Elena's disappearance. It was then that she noticed something strange about the stage lights directly above where Elena had been standing. One of the lights appeared to have been modified. There was additional equipment attached to it that didn't match the other fixtures. She called for a ladder and climbed up to examine it more closely. What she found made her pulse quicken. Hidden among the lighting equipment was a small, sophisticated device that she didn't immediately recognize. She carefully photographed it from every angle before having it removed by the crime scene team. 30 minutes later, Detective Williams called back with the information that made everything fall into place. Chen, you're going to find this interesting. Viktor Petrov has some serious financial problems. He owes over $200,000 in gambling debts to some very unfriendly people. But here's the kicker. 3 days ago, someone deposited $50,000 into his account from an untraceable source. Any idea where the money came from? Still working on that, but I found something else. Petrov has been in contact with a company called Phantom Technologies. They specialize in theatrical special effects and illusion for stage magic. Detective Shen felt the pieces of the puzzle beginning to align. Williams, I need you to get me everything you can on Phantom Technologies, and I want to speak with their owner immediately. An hour later, she was sitting across from Marcus Stone, the founder and CEO of Phantom Technologies. Stone was a thin, nervous man in his 50s who looked like he hadn't slept in days. Mr. Stone, I am investigating the disappearance of Elena Marchetti from Lincoln Center tonight. I have reason to believe your company may have been involved. Stone shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Detective, I want to be clear that I never intended for anyone to get hurt. I was told this was for a publicity stunt, a way to generate buzz for the competition. Who told you that? Victor Petrov. He contacted me 3 weeks ago. Said he wanted to create a spectacular illusion that would make Elena's final performance unforgettable. He paid me $50,000 to design a system that could make someone disappear from the stage without a single trace. Detective Shen leaned forward. How does it work? Stone pulled out a tablet and showed her a complex schematic. It's actually quite ingenious, if I do say so myself. We installed a network of microprojectors in the stage lights, along with specialized sensor that could track a person's exact position. When activated, the system creates a localized holographic field that essentially renders the person invisible to the audience. But where did Elena actually go? There's a small platform hidden in the stage floor, accessed through a concealed panel. When the invisibility field activates, the person drops through the panel onto the platform, which then moves them through a tunnel system we constructed beneath the stage. The whole process takes less than 3 seconds. Detective Shen felt a mixture of admiration for the technical sophistication and anger at the deception. Where does the tunnel lead? To a maintenance room in the basement of the building. But detective, I swear I thought this was just for show. I had no idea Petrov intended to actually kidnap Elena. What about the sheet music? The impossible note? Stone looked confused. I don't know anything about that. The illusion technology I provided only handled the disappearance itself. Detective Shen immediately called for backup and rushed back to Lincoln Center. If Elena was being held in the building's basement, every moment counted. As she coordinated with the building security to search the maintenance areas, she couldn't help but admire the audacity of Victor's plan. By creating an apparently supernatural disappearance, complete with impossible sheet music that suggested otherworldly intervention, Victor had hoped to eliminate his primary competition while deflecting suspicion away from himself. If Elena simply disappeared under mysterious circumstances, he would win the competition by default, earning not just the prize money, but the career boost that would allow him to pay all of his debts. The basement of Lincoln Center was a maze of tunnels, storage rooms, and mechanical spaces. It took nearly 2 hours of searching before they heard a faint sound coming from behind a locked door in the building's sub basement. Elena, Detective Shen called out as officers broke down the door. Inside, they found Elena Marchetti tied to a chair, conscious but clearly shaken. She had been drugged with a mild sedative but was otherwise unharmed. The music, Elena whispered as Detective Shen untied her. He made me write that note on the sheet music. Said it would make people think I was possessed or something supernatural was happening. Victor Petrov? Elena nodded weakly. He was waiting for me when I came off stage during intermission. Told me if I didn't cooperate, he would hurt David, my manager. He had photos of David's apartment, his daily routine. I was terrified. As Elena was taken to the hospital for evaluation, Detective Shen and her team arrested Viktor Petrov in his hotel room. They found detailed plans for the kidnapping, correspondence with Phantom Technologies, and the evidence of his gambling debts. During questioning, Victor broke down and confessed everything. His musical career had been overshadowed by massive gambling losses, and he was facing threats from loan sharks. When he learned that Elena was favored to win the competition, he hatched the elaborate plan to eliminate her while making it appearing supernatural. I knew people already whispered about Elena's abilities, Victor admitted. They said she was too perfect, that there was something unnatural about her playing. I thought if she disappeared under mysterious circumstances, everyone would believe it was connected to those rumors. No one would suspect a kidnapping. The scheme had been months in the planning. Victor had sent the anonymous threatening letters to Elena himself, building a narrative around supernatural forces being displeased with her success. He had arranged for a specialized equipment to be installed in the stage lights during a routine maintenance period and had even practiced the timing of the illusion multiple times. Additional note on the sheet music had been his masterstroke, a detail designed to reinforce the supernatural narrative and prevent anyone from looking for a rational explanation. 3 days later, Elena Marchetti returned to Lincoln Center to complete her performance. The hall was even more packed than before, filled with music lovers who wanted to witness her triumphant return. Viktor Petrov's scheme had backfired spectacularly. Instead of eliminating his competition, he had turned Elena into an international sensation. As Elena took the stage and raised her violin, the audience erupted in applause that lasted nearly 5 minutes. When she finally began to play, her performance was even more breathtaking than before. The music soared through the hall with an emotional depth that seemed to acknowledge everything she had endured. Dr. Webb, watching from his judge's seat, realized that the rumors about Elena's supernatural abilities had been both wrong and right in their own way. There was nothing otherworldly about her technique. She had simply dedicated herself to her craft with an intensity that few could match. But there was something transcendent about her music, something that spoke to the very essence of what made humans capable of creating beauty. Detective Shen, who had returned to watch Elena's triumphant performance, couldn't help but smile as she observed the scene. In her years of police work, she had learned that the most mysterious crimes often had the simplest explanations, and the most elaborate deceptions were usually motivated by the most basic human desires: greed, jealousy, fear. Viktor Petrov was ultimately sentenced to 5 years in prison for kidnapping and conspiracy. His musical career was over, destroyed not by his gambling debts, but by his own desperate choices. The irony was not lost on anyone that in trying to steal Elena's moment of glory, he had only served to amplify it. As for Elena, she went on to win the International Virtuoso competition and launched a career that would span decades. She never spoke publicly about the details of her kidnapping, preferring to let her music speak for itself. But those who know her well could detect a new depth in her performances, a quality that came from someone who had faced genuine fear and emerged stronger. The phantom note that had been added to her sheet music was eventually displayed in the Lincoln Center's museum, alongside a card explaining the true story behind Elena's mysterious disappearance. Visitors often remarked on how ordinary the impossible note looked on paper, how such a simple deception had nearly fooled everyone into believing in the supernatural. The violin that had fallen to the stage that night, still vibrating with Elena's final notes, had been more prophetic than anyone realized. The music, it seemed, really would go on. For more such amazing stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our Scriptonic channel. See you next time!